I'm up here this morning because of my belief in a seed library's capacity to grow community. And when we talk about inspiration, and in reading Rebecca Newburn's seed library, how to set up a seed library, one of the reasons it says that we want to share seed is because it engenders community. And so that was something that really spoke to me. But that is why I'm here, but I have just the most incredible community of support from my colleagues here who really made this thing work, and so they're up here with me also in my heart and my support. And I'm going to spare you my nervousness, and I'm not going to ad-lib. I'm going to actually read from a script here, so if you want to hit the next slide. And thank you all for being here, and especially appreciative to Gary for his chutzpah. You know, who else would try to think that we could coordinate something like this in a matter of months and then actually have people turn out? So, and thank you to all of you for finding a way to be here today. I really look forward to the panels that ensue and just the wealth of ideas that we're going to explore together. So, mine is about the Seed Library, sort of our origin story. And our Seed Library story begins in 2011. And true to the story of a seed, you will see how each nurturing element helps the beauty and potential of this seed's story unfurl. The Seed Library of Pima County Public Library has been on this journey for roughly 4 years now. And much learning and much growing has transpired between now and then. But first I want to take us back to that moment of germination so that we can rightfully acknowledge the woman whose belief in the transformative power of seeds has inspired our own faith in a seed. And that woman is Jo Allen, the heirloom tomato diva of Arabica Heirlooms. At the time of our first introduction back in the spring of 2011, Jo had just spent a week in seed-filled communion at a gathering known as Seed School. And that was started by Bell Star and Bill McDormand. And it's there that she met Rebecca Newburn of Richmond Grove's Seed Lending Library, and where she first encountered this concept of grassroots seed exchanges and repositories known as seed libraries. And Jo, much like a seed made vigorous from having been nourished by the sun, the soil, and the water, had grown eager to share her story upon her return. How fortuitous for us and our community that our pollens crossed so that Jo's story could pollinate ours. There's another lovely and serendipitous vignette in our story, and that's that the backdrop to mine and Jo's first meeting was the Santa Cruz River Farmers Market. This particular farmers market isn't located in one of the more affluent parts of our city. Its home is just west of downtown here, in an area of our community, in an area of town whose demographic is mostly Hispanic and mostly consists of households in the lower socioeconomic rungs of our community. The Santa Cruz River Farmers Market is run by our local community food bank of Southern Arizona, another co-sponsor of this event here. And at that particular time, it had the distinction of being recognized as one of the top 10 farmers markets in the country by Eating Well magazine. And this well-earned designation was largely for the market's groundbreaking model of ensuring that fresh, locally grown and produced, healthful food was both geographically and economically accessible to Southern Arizona's vulnerable populations. And that included the practice of accepting the SNAP benefits at the market, which are the federal government's supplemental nutrition and benefits program. This farmers market was also built around creating consignment opportunities for folks participating in the food bank's other innovative program known as the home gardening program. And through that program, the food bank had developed this terrific mechanism by which digging in the soil could not only feed the home gardener and her family, but her honest labors could also help to nourish others in the community. And very, very powerful. So I think you can begin to see how Jo's introduction to a community-based system of sharing seeds and the empowering food justice ethos of the community food bank Santa Cruz River Farmers Market became the muses for the development of our seed library. So we had our inspiration, and now began the work of negotiating the setup of a seed library within the framework of a public library system. The first step in that journey was to reach out to people who knew seeds and seed saving and seed dispersal. And for us, that was Native Seed Search, a seed conservation nonprofit. A seed conservation nonprofit with a 30-year history of seed stewardship in the desert Southwest. And as you can probably guess by now, our call for help was quickly and warmly answered. And this is where our story meets another bit of cosmic wonder. Because Bill McDorman and Belle Starr, the facilitators of that seed school that Joe had attended, where she first discovered seed libraries, they had just arrived in Tucson as Native Seed Search's new directors. So if we were looking for signs that we were on the right path, this is certainly among them. Belle and Bill quickly connected us with Rebecca, who enthusiastically embraced our interest and began arming us with resources for getting our seed library off the ground. That included putting us in touch with other seed folks who, like Rebecca, took us under their wing and shared their story with us so that we could learn and grow. Rebecca and fellow seed folks, and that's one thing I really want to acknowledge here, is that Rebecca and other seed folks have really elevated this concept of sharing from a mere practice of giving and taking to a system of contribution that cultivates resiliency and vibrancy, relationship building, and community strengthening. All of those wonderful things that have now come to typify the seed library movement. So after all of our seed reconnaissance, I felt surer than ever that seed sharing and our public libraries were the right fit. Public libraries are our society's commons, whose province is the equitable and accessible dissemination of information. And seeds are information. Their history, culture, journey, ingenuity, nourishment, possibility, people, and story. And anyone who's spent a day outdoors has come home to find seedy hitchhikers clinging to your socks, you know that seeds are also designed for dissemination. And libraries, particularly today, more than ever, are hubs for exchange and learning and engaging. And we believe that those are many of the qualities a seed library community needs to grow. So by facilitating greater access to seeds and the information needed to grow, save, and share them, seed libraries can offer people with options for healthier lifestyles, potentially and hopefully promoting the values of food justice. A seed library has the potential to be a mechanism by which we can help elevate our community's awareness of and create conversations around the issues of environmental stewardship, conservation, sustainability, culture, and more. So it was our great excitement and relief that our library administration had also recognized that it was a good fit. They were so inspired by the community, by the sort of concept of a community nourishing themselves and one another through seed stewardship, that they inspired us to think bigger than we had been, and to come up with a way to facilitate access to seeds for the nearly 1 million people living in the 9,000 plus square miles of urban and rural Pima County, which is how we came to be here today, with the seed library collection and 8 physical branches, and a system of cataloged seeds that can be searched for online and placed on reserve to be delivered to card holders at any one of the 27 branches in our library system. And Kelly's presentation tomorrow morning will give you a more in-depth look at the back-end systems that we've all created to help us achieve this scale of circulation. And talk more about the protocols for accession and processing. So here we are. We've been given this green light, and we're ready to plant and plant new seeds in our community. But as every gardener eventually comes to understand, you need good soil, a good foundation from which to grow. And that foundation and that fertility for us was our community. And one thing we knew through our time exploring other seed libraries was that the seed library should be reflective of the needs, interests, and resources of the community. We coordinated a few community advisory meetings and invited individual gardeners and seed savers, as well as folks from the local gardening agencies and nonprofits like the Master Gardeners, the Food Bank's Home Gardening Program, Native Seed Search, Tucson Community Gardens, among others. And those meetings really made clear for us what our mission in those first few years of the seed library would be. So, and I think we talked about this, some of us were talking about this last night, so we had these fantasies that we'd open our drawers to the public and be met with this savvy community of seed savers, ready to take their seeds home and begin the work of creating this self-sustaining seed library, and that we'd be facilitating all of these wonderful community conservation conversations around food and sustainability topics. We thought that was going to happen immediately. But it was really the sage advice of Melissa Munt from the Community Food Bank's Home Gardener Program, through her experience working with the kind of newbie gardeners in the community, that suggested that we focus instead our energies on making sure that these beautiful and stored seeds could make it into the hands of our soil and our community. So we turned our attention to the work of getting seeds into the community and laying the foundations for a robust network of support so people could begin to cultivate their relationships to the cycles of growing, and to give families a chance to rediscover what real food is and where it comes from, and also give people the freedom and time to develop their own appreciation for the significance of a seed. And so many of us in the room probably hold a seed in the palm of our hand and are moved by the riches encoded within. But for many of us, and many new gardeners, the thoughts running through our heads tend to be more along the lines of, which end is up, how far apart do I plant, and when do I plant? And seed, while remarkable and magical, can also be a baffling and scary thing for the uninitiated. So, I think we're here. I skipped ahead. So at this slide here. So finally, we were ready to open in January of 2012. We threw this enormous open house party out here on the plaza. We invited folks from different gardening clubs, sustainability groups, the food sovereignty folks, wild food foragers, seed savers, youth farmers, makers, community advocacy organizations, to not only join us in helping celebrate the Seed Library's inauguration, but to help us begin that work of building the network of support, and also teaching ourselves, us in the library community, what was available in our community. And so you probably all have this well figured out by now, but leveraging the resources in one's community is not only smart in terms of not having to reinvent the wheel, but it's also necessary for institutions, much like public libraries and nonprofits, don't have the means, such as staffing and financing, and sometimes even the knowledge, to meet on their own the needs of a burgeoning seed library community. And by establishing these formal and informal sorts of partnerships, we're creating new stakeholders. We're helping get the word out about our seed libraries, and we're creating potential avenues for seed donations, possibilities for future collaboration, and more wonderfully than that, we're turning on that sort of old, staid, institutional notion, that paradigm that we can do this all by ourselves. And why should we do it by ourselves, and why not share and build on one another's strengths and good works? So we opened, it was magnificent, people were excited and curious and proud. In fact, during those early months, those sentiments of pride and ownership were evident in social media. I don't know how many of you had followed, many of you are from Arizona, but the folks who are coming from elsewhere, if you follow Arizona news at all, but at the time at the time of our opening, we had just honored the 1-year anniversary of the tragic mass shooting at a Gabrielle Giffords constituency gathering that killed and severely injured many. And we were also torn as a community over things that were happening at the state and local level of our legislation, and things in our community felt very divisive. Social media was heavy with anger and hurt. And then the Seed Library opened, and there was this noticeable, very palpable shift in the tenor of some of the posts that we were seeing on social media. People went from posting about packing their bags and getting ready to flee Arizona to people talking about the renewed sense of pride they had over having discovered that their community was shepherding an effort like a seed library. Some posts even thanking the library for helping shift local and national news from sort of a negative spin to a very positive one. And many also admitted to being lapsed library users, but were ready to give us another try if it meant that they could borrow seeds. So we were definitely sort of basking in that love. And social media wasn't the only, wasn't the only place where we were witnessing people's embrace of the seed library. It was also evidenced by the nearly 6,700 packets of heirloom and open pollinated seeds that made it into the hands of the people within that first year. And of that, of that, roughly 40% of those seeds were of local stock, which really sort of blew Melissa's theory out of the water. But no, that was really incredible that 40% of our seed were already of local stock, including this loofah that our colleague Sue and her mother had been growing and saving seed from here in Tucson since the 1960s, making soaps and giving these as gifts to folks over the years and sharing their seeds. And now Stephen, who shared this photo with us on Facebook, was carrying on the tradition of growing this definitely local land-raised loofah. And then there were Nandi's waist-high marigolds that had traveled with him all the way from his home in Bhutan, that were now standing sentry over desert gardens. And then there are the cowpeas that the gardeners at the Pio Decimo Community Garden have been growing and saving and replanting from for a handful of years now, which came to us through donation and which have now found new patches of soil to sink their roots into and stewards to care for. Their speckled beauty and their name was enough to inspire our volunteers with the library's Plaza Planter Project to plant them in the planters out in front of the library last spring. Their verdant presence on the plaza and the hands that tend to them have helped transform the narrative of the plaza from once neglected to now engaged. So, all manners of community engagement can blossom from a seed library. A seed library's very nature necessitates community participation, a truth which we celebrate wherever we can. And the library's planter project, some call Occupy the Planters, came about in late summer of 2013. It was conceived of as part seed library demonstration garden, part community garden, and part effort to re-energize a downtown space that had become a pass-through rather than a destination. People living, working, and going to school in the downtown area, or folks just spending time down here, are the caretakers. They water, they weed, and they sow, and they share their harvest amongst themselves, but mostly with passersby. And at the end of the summer, we're going to be celebrating 2 years of digging in this soil together. All right. So probably one of the more universal seed library outreach events, and one that we hold dearly, and I noticed many seed libraries hold this one dearly, is the ever popular seed repacking parties. And I guess you'd say they're sort of like the modern day equivalent of the sewing circle or barn raising party. They bring folks together under the sort of guise of getting work done, but to our great pleasure, it always feels much more like coming together and building relationships. So for a period during the spring of 2013, there was sort of a dearth of seeds to repackage. We'd sort of motored through all the seeds, but we really were just hungry to keep up that energy of coming together and to continue feeding our new friendships and learning from one another. So we had the fun idea to collaborate with the library's urban yarn folks on a public yarn bomb project that would marry their yen for fiber and our yen for fruit. We gathered several times over the course of the months with the needle crafters introducing us to their skills and we seed folk acquainting them with seed stewardship and gardening. And what grew from that collaboration was not only some pretty fabulous botanically themed yarn bottles and some mean needle skills, but we like to think that those bubbles that we humans sometimes kind of create around ourselves just got stretched all the more further by opening ourselves up to folks that we might not ordinarily connect with. So nearly 4 years after having scattered those first seeds, it's lovely to be able to take a look back here and see where we've come and also pay homage to the people who helped us get there. I want to acknowledge the gratitude and pride I have for the library systems who have not been so tied to the old state notion that a library can only be books, but that resources can be the myriad things that will enrich our lives and help us discover our world, things such as a seed. I'm even prouder of our community for embracing this journey with us. Agricultural seed saving is a very deliberate thing. Most of the time it necessitates that we forfeit an opportunity to fill our plates and our stomachs today so that we can have seed to grow for the following seasons. So it's so hopeful to us to contemplate that the seeds that are beginning to fill our drawers are there because friends and strangers alike across demographics have intentionally nurtured them for the purpose of sharing. So I thank you all for this opportunity this morning to share this part of our community seed story. It wasn't exhaustive, obviously, but there are some, I didn't include a lot of the challenges that we've faced and how we might address these, and we're hoping that these will be things that we discuss later in the panels. I'd also like to close with a quick poem by Brother Coyote, aka Gary Nabhan, that he wrote for Bill McDormand and Bellstar, and it's called Agricultural Amnesia. A seed encapsulates the legacy of our embeddedness. In landscapes so seminal to our culture, we and our ancestors have called them home. But the seed's most priceless gift is this. If it becomes buried like a time capsule, carrying our tastes, even a litter of our hopes into the future, but by doing so, it bends time back on itself like some great sweeping arc. For our people to forfeit the birthright to grow and save its garden seeds is as perilous as it is incomprehensible. For how can any creature risk forgetting the very thing most nourishing? So I thank you all.